I still remember the first time I questioned a nut. It was a chilly morning in Kyoto years ago. I had just finished a home visit with an elderly woman named Yuki. She was 84, sharp as a tack, but her blood pressure had been creeping up for months. Nothing in her routine seemed unusual. She walked daily, ate mostly whole foods, and stayed hydrated. But something didn't add up. I asked her to walk me through her breakfast. She smiled and proudly said, "Every morning, I start my day with a small bowl of mixed nuts. Peanuts, cashews, sometimes a few macadamias." She said it like someone repeating advice from a health magazine. And that's when it hit me. Even the healthiest habits can become harmful when they no longer match the needs of an aging body. That quiet morning became the beginning of a deeper journey for me. Over the next decade, I started seeing it everywhere. Seniors who tried to do the right thing. They avoided sugar, cut down on red meat, added more nuts, but still ended up with rising blood pressure, joint pain, poor sleep, memory issues. The problem wasn't bad intentions. It was incomplete information. Today, we're going to talk about something most doctors don't explain clearly. How certain nuts can either support your heart, your brain, and your bones, or quietly sabotage them over time. You'll learn which 4 nuts are your best allies after 60, which ones you might want to reconsider, especially if you're on medications, and the surprising reason why one popular health nut could be silently raising your blood sugar and damaging your liver. More importantly, you'll walk away with real, practical choices you can start using this week. Small, sustainable changes that can bring peace to your body and clarity to your mind. Before we begin, I'd love to know, what's your go-to snack these days? Feel free to share it in the comments below. You might be surprised by what others are eating too. Now, let's begin with a question most people never ask. Is the nut in your hand healing you, or quietly hurting you? Let's find out. 1. The nut trap: why healthy can be misleading after 60. A few winters ago, I visited a retired school principal named Harold in a small fishing town near Kanazawa. He was 72, kind-hearted, and had always taken pride in staying active. He practiced Tai Chi every morning by the sea, cooked most of his own meals, and kept a notebook of everything he ate. But lately, Harold had been feeling off. His blood sugar was unstable. He felt sluggish. His doctor told him he was bordering on prediabetes, and his weight had crept up despite no major changes in his diet. He looked puzzled as he told me, "I've done everything right. I gave up desserts. I cut back on red meat, and I snack on healthy things now, mostly nuts." When I asked which nuts, he smiled and pulled out a neatly labeled jar. Honey-roasted cashews. "A handful every afternoon," he said. "Much better than cookies, right?" That's when I gently placed the jar back on the table and said, "Let's take a closer look." You see, cashews are often seen as a healthier alternative to processed snacks. And compared to chips, they are. But for someone in their 70s, the story gets more complicated. Cashews are higher in carbohydrates than most other nuts. Just 1 ounce can contain 9 grams of carbs, with very little fiber to buffer the blood sugar spike. Add a honey glaze, and it becomes something else entirely. And Harold wasn't alone. Over the years, I've met dozens of seniors who made similar swaps, thinking they were making the best choice. They traded soda for fruit juice, candy for natural trail mix, cookies for clean peanut butter. But often, these well-intentioned decisions backfire slowly, quietly. Because what worked for you at 40 may not work at 70. Your metabolism changes. Your insulin sensitivity shifts. Your ability to digest and absorb fats and carbs is no longer the same. And here's the deeper truth. The label healthy is not one size fits all, especially after 60. Harold didn't need to stop eating nuts. He just needed to understand which ones truly support his aging body and which ones might be quietly working against him. After we made a few simple changes, switching his afternoon snack to a small handful of walnuts and unsalted almonds, his blood sugar stabilized within weeks. He felt lighter, more alert, and, as he told me with a grin, he stopped falling asleep during his late afternoon reading sessions. The lesson here is simple. Health is not about copying trends. It is about listening to your body as it changes and choosing foods that meet you where you are now, not where you used to be. So the next time you see a snack labeled heart healthy or natural, ask yourself, healthy for whom? At what age? And in what quantity? Coming up, we'll explore which 4 nuts are truly your allies after 60. Ones that can protect your heart, sharpen your mind, support your bones, and even help you sleep more deeply. Let's start with a quiet powerhouse you might already have in your kitchen drawer. Almonds, and what they're doing behind the scenes that most people don't realize. 2. What your heart really thinks of nuts. When I first met Mrs. Tanaka, she had just turned 76. A gentle woman with a soft voice and a lifelong love of gardening. She lived in a quiet suburb outside Osaka and spent her mornings tending to the flowers her late husband had planted decades ago. But her heart had begun to speak a language she didn't quite understand. Her pulse was irregular. Her blood pressure bounced between high and higher, and she had started feeling breathless while doing simple things, like climbing the stairs or walking to the market. She showed me her food journal with pride. It was filled with green tea, miso soup, grilled fish, and, circled in red ink, her new daily habit, a generous handful of macadamia nuts. I read they're good for the heart, she said, and it's true. Macadamias are creamy, rich, and plant-based. They sound like a heart-healthy dream. But for a body that's slowing down and a heart that's already working hard, there's more to the story. Macadamias are one of the most calorie-dense nuts, over 200 calories per ounce. They are also high in saturated fat, which can raise LDL cholesterol if not balanced properly. And for someone like Mrs. Tanaka, who had recently cut back on exercise due to knee stiffness, that handful was doing more harm than good. I explained to her that not all fats are created equal. The heart prefers the kind found in almonds and pistachios, lighter, cleaner, and better for managing cholesterol and inflammation. So we made a trade. She replaced macadamias with almonds in the morning and added a small serving of pistachios in the afternoon. No salt, just the nut as nature made it. Within 2 months, her blood pressure readings began to settle. Her energy improved. And most of all, she said she felt less heavy not just in her body, but in her chest. What I've learned through patients like Mrs. Tanaka is that the heart is not just a pump. It is a listener. It responds to what we give it not only in medication but in food, in movement, and in stress. Nuts can be a powerful ally for your cardiovascular system, but only if you choose the ones that truly speak your heart's language. If your goal is to support circulation, reduce inflammation, and gently lower your cholesterol, almonds, pistachios, and walnuts should be part of your rhythm. Peanuts, macadamias, and overly salted or processed varieties. Those might deserve a second thought. And remember, even the best nuts can become a burden if eaten in excess, or without regard to your body's needs at this stage of life. In the next section, we're going to shift our focus upward to the brain. Because just like the heart, your brain is having its own conversation with the foods you eat. And there is one nut in particular that holds the key to mental clarity, sharper memory, and even better sleep. Let's talk about walnuts, and the silent way they strengthen what matters most. 3. Brain fuel or brain fog, the neurological impact of nuts. A few years ago, I was called to visit a man named Richard, a 75-year-old retired calligrapher living in the old town of Nara. His home was quiet, filled with books, brushes, and the gentle scent of cedar wood. He had spent most of his life practicing the art of stillness, shaping each stroke with care and attention. But lately, something was off. He would forget where he put his glasses. He repeated the same story twice in one conversation. And he confessed, almost in a whisper, that sometimes he would sit down to write and forget why he had picked up the brush in the first place. "It's like a fog," he said. "Not enough to stop me, but enough to make me feel like I'm slowly fading." He had started eating more snacks to help with energy. Cashews mostly, a small bowl after lunch, another in the evening. "They're healthy, right?" he asked. I sat with him and explained something I've seen too often. Cashews, though soft and comforting, are high in carbohydrates and low in protective compounds like omega-3s or antioxidants. For the aging brain, that combination can contribute to inflammation, sugar spikes, and over time, mental fatigue. I recommended something else. something that, coincidentally, looked a lot like the very organ we were trying to protect. Walnuts. Walnuts are rich in alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 that supports the structure of brain cells and the flow of neurotransmitters. They also contain polyphenol powerful compounds that help calm inflammation in neural tissue. And something Richard had never heard of, natural melatonin. That night, we made a plan. Just 7 walnut halves in the early evening, paired with a cup of warm barley tea. Within 3 weeks, he wrote me a note. The fog had begun to lift. His sleep deepened. His clarity returned, little by little. Of course, walnuts were not the only reason, but they played their part. In the quiet way food often does, not as a cure, but as a companion to healing. The truth is, your brain is not just an organ. It's the keeper of your memories, your creativity, your sense of self. And as we age, it becomes more vulnerable to what we feed it. Nuts like walnuts, almonds, and pistachios offer protection. They nourish from the inside out. On the other hand, cashews and pine nuts, especially when processed or salted, may do the opposite, triggering inflammation or contributing to imbalances that the brain cannot afford. So next time you reach for a snack, ask yourself, will this help me think more clearly, sleep more deeply, or remember more fully? Because even small choices add up, and clarity is something worth protecting. In our next section, we'll move from the mind to the frame that carries it. Let's talk about bones, and how a single mineral hidden in your favorite nut could mean the difference between stability and a fall. 4. Bone strength at 70, the calcium-magnesium story. It was a late autumn afternoon when I visited May, a 73-year-old former dancer living near Nagano. Her home was filled with warmth, wooden floors, paper windows, and a small record player softly spinning old jazz vinyls. She moved gracefully, even when she sat down. But that day, she was in a wheelchair. I only slipped a little, she told me, eyes steady but quiet. The fall wasn't dramatic, but the break was. A clean fracture to her left hip, just from standing too quickly on a chilly morning. What struck me most was how surprised she was. I eat well, she said. I drink milk. I take my calcium. I even sprinkle chia seeds on my breakfast. And she did. Her nutrition was thoughtful. But one thing was missing. Magnesium. You see, after 60, our bones lose more than just density. They also lose their ability to properly absorb and use calcium. And that's where magnesium comes in. It acts like a guide, helping calcium move into bones instead of collecting where it shouldn't, like in arteries. I looked over her food diary. There it was. Plenty of calcium-rich foods, but none of the nuts that provide the key partner, magnesium. So I introduced her to almonds. A small handful a day, rich in both calcium and magnesium. Paired with leafy greens and a bit of movement, they help restore the balance many people don't even know they've lost. Over time, as May's strength returned, so did her confidence. She didn't go back to dancing, but she did start gardening again. It feels like dancing, she smiled, just with flowers now. And it reminded me of something I've seen again and again. Strong bones aren't just built in youth. They are rebuilt patiently, intentionally, even in our 70s and beyond. So if you're relying only on calcium to protect your frame, it might be time to look deeper. Almonds offer a quiet strength, not just for bones, but for the heart and mind as well. The lesson here is this: balance matters more than quantity. Without magnesium, calcium is a stone. With it, calcium becomes architecture. Next, we'll shift from bones to blood. Let's talk about a hidden danger that sneaks into your pantry disguised as health. It's not about the nut itself, but how it's prepared. Salt, sugar, oil. The real problem may not be what you're eating, but how it's been processed before it ever reaches your hands. 5. Silent saboteurs. Salt, sugar, and hidden dangers in processed nuts. Not long ago, I met a woman named Clara in Okinawa. She was 70, bright-eyed, full of stories, and proud of the changes she had made after her retirement. She had stopped drinking soda. She walked an hour each day, and her pantry, she said with a smile, was healthier than ever. That was true in part. She showed me her shelves, lined with dried fruits, granola mixes, and a tall jar of roasted peanuts labeled 100% natural. She reached for them between meals, believing they were a perfect snack. But her blood pressure told a different story. It had crept up over the past year. Her ankles had begun to swell in the evenings. She was waking up more often at night, thirsty and restless. When I asked if she had looked at the nutrition label on her favorite nuts, she paused. "I never thought I needed to," she admitted. We sat down together and turned the jar around. One serving, just a small handful, had over 280 milligrams of sodium. Add the flavored almonds she enjoyed after lunch, and the salted cashews she kept by the TV, and she was unknowingly taking in more sodium from her healthy snacks than from her actual meals. This is more common than most people realize. Many nuts on supermarket shelves are roasted in oils that are far from heart-friendly. Canola, soybean, or even hydrogenated fats. Others are coated in glazes or seasoned with sugars, preservatives, and artificial flavors. These invisible additions can turn a health-promoting food into a slow-building problem. In Clara's case, we made small, thoughtful changes. She swapped her roasted peanuts for raw almonds. She learned to toast her own nuts at home dry, without oil, without salt. And she began checking every label before it went into her cart. Within a month, her blood pressure eased. Her swelling reduced. And she told me with a laugh, "I still snack. I just snack smarter now." The lesson is simple but powerful. It's not just what we eat, but how that food is prepared, preserved, and presented. A clean nut can support the heart, but a heavily salted or sugar-coated one, that can quietly sabotage it. So before reaching into the jar, pause, turn it around, read the fine print. Ask yourself, is this the food I intended to eat, or has it been dressed up to deceive me? Now that we've uncovered the hidden dangers in the processing of nuts, let's look at something just as quiet but even more dangerous. What if the nuts you eat every day are interfering with your medication? In the next section, we'll explore the overlooked interactions between common nuts and prescription drugs and why no one seems to talk about it. 6. Medication matters. The overlooked interactions between nuts and your pills. In a quiet neighborhood just outside of Fukuoka, I met Charles, a 79-year-old American expat who had moved to Japan after retiring from a long career as a jazz musician. He lived a peaceful life, played guitar in the afternoons, took walks with his dog, kept a meticulous list of his medications, taped neatly to his refrigerator. He was doing everything right. He had high blood pressure and atrial fibrillation, so his doctor had prescribed warfarin to prevent blood clots. He took it faithfully every morning at the same time. He kept his salt low, exercised regularly, and avoided alcohol. But something strange had been happening. His INR levels, the numbers used to monitor blood thinning, had become unpredictable. Too high one week, too low the next, puzzled both Charles and his physician, until I asked about his diet. He thought for a moment, then said, "Well, I've been eating more peanuts lately. I found this roasted kind I really like. I snack on them while I read." Peanuts are often praised as a healthy snack, but there's something many people don't realize. They contain high levels of vitamin K. And vitamin K plays a direct role in how blood thinners like warfarin work. Too much can blunt the medication's effect. Too little can increase the risk of bleeding. For Charles, it wasn't the medicine that was failing him. It was the snack he trusted. We adjusted his habits. He reduced his peanut intake and replaced them with a small serving of pistachios, a nut lower in vitamin K and gentler on his medication plan. Within a few weeks, his INR levels stabilized. He felt more secure, less worried, more in control. And that's a feeling every patient deserves. But peanuts aren't the only concern. Pine nuts, for example, can interact with over 60 common medications, including antidepressants and blood pressure drugs. Their fats and compounds, especially when oxidized, can affect how the body metabolizes certain prescriptions. The challenge is that these interactions are rarely discussed. Most pharmacists don't warn you. Labels don't mention it. And unless someone connects the dots, the issue goes unnoticed. The lesson is clear. When it comes to your health after 60, food and medicine are not separate worlds. They speak to each other, constantly. And it's your responsibility with the guidance of your doctor to make sure that conversation is one of harmony, not interference. Now that we've talked about caution, let's talk about creation. In the next section, I'll show you how to build a simple, smart, and sustainable nut routine that fits your body, your lifestyle, and your health without confusion or worry. A daily rhythm that supports you rather than surprises you. 7. Smarter snacking. How to build a senior-friendly nut routine. One morning in the coastal town of Shizuoka, I sat down for tea with Naomi, a retired teacher who had recently turned 68. She was energetic, sharp-witted, and had taken up painting in her free time. But what she wanted to talk about that day wasn't her art. It was something much simpler. Snacks, she said with a grin. They're my weakness. Naomi had started paying closer attention to her health after a minor scare with her blood pressure. She cut back on sweets, started cooking more at home, and read every label in the grocery store. But she confessed she still struggled with afternoon cravings. I don't want to go back to cookies, she said, but I need something that feels like a treat. So we created a routine, not a restriction, a rhythm. Morning, just one Brazil nut with her green tea. That small, single nut would give her the selenium her thyroid needed without risking an overdose. Midday, a handful of raw almonds, easy to chew, gentle on her blood sugar, and packed with magnesium to help her bones and heart. Afternoon, about 7 walnut halves, a soft, earthy snack that gave her brain a boost and helped her feel calm as the day wound down. Evening, if needed, a few pistachios, shelled slowly, mindfully, as she listened to music or sketched. The act of shelling helped her eat less and savor more. What mattered most was not just the nuts themselves, but the way she engaged with them. No rushing, no grazing, no eating out of big bags while distracted. She portioned each serving into a small dish. She called it her ritual of care, and that's exactly what it became. Over time, Naomi's energy evened out. Her cravings became manageable. She began to notice how certain nuts made her feel focused, while others left her heavy or bloated. She stopped thinking of snacks as a guilty pleasure and started seeing them as part of her healing. The lesson here is simple. Snacks are not the enemy, but they do require intention. For seniors, a smart nut routine means choosing variety, watching portion sizes, and paying attention to how your body responds. It means avoiding added salt, sugar, and oils. It means knowing when enough is enough and trusting your body to tell you. One small bowl, one quiet moment, one thoughtful choice. That is how strength is built, not through force, but through rhythm. And as we come to our final section, I want to share something that ties it all together. A simple shift in mindset, one that could change the way you eat, think, and feel, not just for today, but for every day ahead. Let's talk about how one small switch can open the door to lifelong change. 8. One simple switch, a healthier you in 30 days. A few months ago, I received a handwritten letter from a man named George. He was 74, a retired train conductor from Chicago, now living quietly with his wife in a small countryside town near Kobe. In the letter, he told me something that stopped me in my tracks. He wrote, "I didn't know food could lie to me." George had always been what most people would call healthy. He didn't smoke. He walked every day. He had a good relationship with his doctor. But for years, he had also been eating the same thing every night, a big scoop of peanut butter on white toast before bed. He chose it because it was comforting, familiar, and it said natural on the label. But after watching one of our videos, he decided to make a change. Not a huge overhaul, just one switch. He swapped his peanut butter for a small bowl of walnuts and almond slices. No sugar, no added oils, just the real thing. 30 days later, he went in for his regular checkup. His blood pressure had dropped slightly. His sleep had improved. And, in his words, the fog in my head wasn't as loud anymore. But the biggest change wasn't in his numbers. It was in how he felt. "I feel like I'm helping my body," he wrote, "not just feeding it." This, to me, is the heart of the matter. We are not talking about diets. We are talking about dignity. about learning how to feed the body that has carried us through so much, and honoring it in the way we nourish it now. So here's your invitation. Start with one switch, just one. Maybe it's trading salted peanuts for raw almonds. Maybe it's swapping honey-roasted cashews for a handful of walnuts. Maybe it's simply pausing before you snack and asking yourself, is this helping me or just filling space? Do it for a week, then 2, then a month. Let your body respond. Let your mind clear. Let your energy return in quiet, steady ways. Health is not a race. It is a rhythm. And sometimes the most powerful changes begin with the smallest steps. Thank you for walking this path with me today. I hope what you've heard stays with you not just in your mind, but in your habits, your kitchen, and your everyday choices. If this video helped you or reminded you of someone you care about, please share it with them. Leave a comment below to tell me what switch you're starting with. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next step in our journey together. Because healing is not something we chase. It is something we return to, one thoughtful choice at a time.